My name is Nathan. I am 28 years old, and until 5 years ago, I thought I had the most supportive family in Boston. Then came my cousin Megan's wedding, the day that turned my entire world upside down. One vicious lie was all it took for every single family member to disown me completely. For 5 long years, I lived as an outcast until the truth finally surfaced. Now they are all desperately begging for forgiveness, but some bridges once burned should remain in ashes. Before I get into this nightmare, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if family betrayal stories make your blood boil like mine. Family meant everything to me before that fateful wedding day. Every single Sunday, rain or shine, our entire extended family would gather at my grandparents' colonial-style home in Brookline for dinner. My grandmother, Catherine, would spend the entire day preparing a feast that could feed an army, while my grandfather, Thomas, held court in the living room, telling the same stories we had all heard 100 times but still laughed at. Anyway, those Sunday dinners were sacred. Nobody missed them unless they were deathly ill or out of state. Every summer, like clockwork, we would rent a cluster of beachfront cottages on Cape Cod for 2 weeks. All 14 cousins would stay up late playing card games, making bonfires, and sharing secrets. Among those cousins, Megan was always special to me. Only 11 months apart in age, we were practically raised as siblings. She was the artistic one with dreams of opening her own gallery someday, while I was the practical one who followed a more conventional path into software engineering. My parents, David and Susan, were respected figures in both our family hierarchy and our community. Dad ran a successful dental practice where Mom worked as the office manager. They were the couple other relatives turned to for advice on everything from financial planning to relationship problems. And me, I was the responsible one, the level-headed cousin who could be trusted with secrets and called upon when someone needed help moving or fixing their computer. But my closest relationship was with my grandfather, Thomas. A retired carpenter, he took me under his wing when I was just 7 years old, teaching me how to bait a hook, build a birdhouse, and eventually craft furniture that would last generations. Always measure twice cut, once he would say, both about woodworking and life decisions. Every Saturday morning throughout my childhood and well into my 20s, I would drive over to help him with projects in his workshop, soaking up not just his carpentry skills, but his wisdom about life, integrity, and the importance of family. Family is the only thing that matters in the end, Nathan, he would tell me while sanding a table edge to silky smoothness. These bonds we have, they are stronger than anything else in this world. The irony of those words would haunt me later. It was during one of those Sunday dinners that Megan introduced Ryan to the family. They had been dating for only 3 months, but the diamond on her finger told us everything we needed to know. Aunt Patricia, always the dramatic one, nearly fainted from excitement, while Uncle William immediately broke out the expensive scotch he had been saving. Something about Ryan rubbed me the wrong way from the beginning. Maybe it was the way his smile never quite reached his eyes, or how he steered every conversation toward his fledgling investment business. He had an answer for everything, and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. When he talked about their whirlwind romance, it seemed like he was pitching a movie, rather than describing a genuine relationship. After dinner, I found Megan alone in the kitchen, and gently suggested that perhaps they could have a longer engagement, get to know each other better, before taking the plunge. "You sound just like my dad," she laughed, but there was a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "When you know, right? Ryan is exactly what I need. Someone decisive, someone with vision." The wedding plans quickly spiraled into something far more extravagant than anything our family had ever done. The venue was an exclusive mountain resort in the Berkshires that cost more than my annual salary. The guest list ballooned to 300 people, many of whom were Ryan's business contacts. The flowers were being flown in from Ecuador. Everything seemed to be Ryan's vision rather than what Megan had always described as her dream wedding, a simple ceremony in her parents' garden with fairy lights and wildflowers. My own life was going exceptionally well during this period. I had just received a substantial promotion at work, moving up to lead developer on a project that could potentially reshape our company's future. I had a comfortable apartment in Cambridge, a close circle of friends, and a relatively new relationship with Stephanie, a pediatric nurse I had met at a friend's housewarming party. When Megan asked me to give a speech at the wedding, I was genuinely touched. Despite my reservations about Ryan, I wanted nothing but happiness for my cousin. I spent weeks crafting the perfect words that would honor our childhood bond while welcoming Ryan to the family. Stephanie was excited about the wedding, seeing it as an opportunity to meet my entire family in one setting. "They sound amazing," she said as we packed for the wedding weekend. "Especially your grandfather. I cannot wait to meet him." I promised her that Thomas would love her, especially when he learned she could name every type of wood from a small sample, a skill she had picked up from her father's furniture restoration business. 2 days before the wedding, we made the 2-hour drive to the Berkshires, marveling at the stunning fall foliage that painted the mountains in vibrant reds and golds. The resort was even more impressive in person. A sprawling main lodge with adjacent luxury cabins all overlooking a pristine lake that reflected the surrounding mountains like a mirror. At the rehearsal dinner, I was seated at a table with Ryan's family, including his sister Amber. While Ryan's parents were friendly enough, if a bit ostentatious with their designer clothes and constant name-dropping, Amber maintained an icy demeanor toward me from the moment we were introduced. She barely acknowledged my attempts at conversation and seemed to be watching me with suspicious eyes throughout the evening. During the dinner, I noticed some tension between Ryan and Megan. They had what appeared to be a heated discussion in whispers at one point, with Megan blinking back tears before excusing herself to the restroom. When she returned, her smile seemed forced, but she jumped right back into bride mode, making rounds to greet everyone. As I fell asleep that night in our cabin, I could not shake the feeling that something was off. But I dismissed it as pre-wedding jitters and my own lingering reservations about Ryan. Tomorrow was Megan's big day, and regardless of my personal feelings, I was determined to make it special for her. Little did I know, it would become the day that would shatter my life into pieces. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and crisp, one of those perfect fall days that make New England famous. I woke early and headed to the main lodge to help with last-minute arrangements. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon, but there were still centerpieces to arrange, seating cards to organize, and 1,000 small details that needed attention. As I turned a corner in the hallway carrying a box of programs, I nearly collided with Amber. She was already dressed in her bridesmaid gown, her hair perfectly styled, though the wedding was still hours away. "Watch where you are going," she snapped, stepping back as though I had intentionally tried to run into her. "Sorry about that," I said, attempting to be polite despite her attitude. Excited for the big day. She gave me a strange look, almost calculating. "Just make sure you do not mess anything up for my brother. This day means everything to him." Before I could respond to this odd warning, she swept past me, the scent of her overwhelming perfume lingering in the air. Around noon, I passed by one of the small meeting rooms whose door was slightly ajar. I heard raised voices inside Ryan and Megan. I was about to continue walking to give them privacy when I heard Ryan say something that stopped me cold. "We already discussed this, Megan. The papers are ready to sign next week. Your inheritance is exactly what the business needs to expand. Why are you getting cold feet now?" "I just think maybe we should wait a little longer," Megan replied, her voice trembling. "Grandma left that money for my gallery dream. Maybe we could use just part of it." "Do you want to be married to a success or a failure?" Ryan's voice had hardened. "This opportunity will not wait. If we do not move now, someone else will. Is that what you want? To watch me fail?" There was a pause, followed by Megan's tearful acquiescence. "No, of course not. You are right. We will sign the papers next week." I quickly continued down the hall, my mind racing. Megan's grandmother had left her a substantial inheritance, specifically for her to open the art gallery she had always dreamed about. Now it seemed Ryan was pressuring her to invest it all in his business instead. The conversation did not sit right with me, but it was not my place to interfere in their financial decisions, at least not on their wedding day. The ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful. The resort's garden had been transformed with white roses and golden maple leaves. When Megan walked down the aisle on Uncle William's arm, she looked radiant in her vintage-inspired lace gown. Despite my concerns, I felt genuinely happy watching her face light up as she reached Ryan at the altar. Whatever my reservations, this was her choice, and I respected that. The reception began in the resort's grand ballroom, which had been decorated to resemble an enchanted forest with centerpieces of tall birch branches, adorned with twinkling lights, and tables named after different types of trees instead of numbers. The dinner was exquisite, featuring local farm-to-table cuisine paired with wines from a nearby vineyard. When it came time for speeches, I approached the microphone with nervous anticipation. Looking out at the sea of familiar faces, my parents beaming with pride, my grandfather giving me an encouraging nod, cousins waiting expectantly. I delivered the speech I had carefully crafted. I spoke about growing up with Megan, her kindness, her creativity, her loyalty. I welcomed Ryan to our family and wished them a lifetime of happiness together. The speech was met with warm applause and a tearful hug from Megan. "That was perfect," she whispered in my ear. "Thank you for always being there for me." As the band began playing and the dance floor filled up, I stepped outside onto the terrace for some fresh air. The evening had turned cool, and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. As I admired the view of the mountains silhouetted against the sunset, I heard quiet sobbing coming from the garden below. Following the sound, I found Megan sitting alone on a stone bench, her elaborate dress pooled around her tears, streaming down her face and ruining her carefully applied makeup. "Megan, what is wrong? Are you okay?" I sat beside her, offering my pocket square to dry her tears. She took several shuddering breaths before speaking. "I do not know if I made the right decision, Nathan. Everything is happening so fast." "With the wedding? Or something else?" I asked gently. After a pause, she confided, "Ryan wants me to put my entire inheritance into his business. The whole thing, all $300,000. He has the papers ready for me to sign next week." Her voice broke. "That money was for my gallery. Grandma wanted me to follow my dream." I chose my words carefully, not wanting to overstep. "Megan, it is your money, and ultimately your decision. But maybe talk to your parents first, or consult with a financial advisor before making such a big commitment. There is no rush." "Right." She nodded, seeming to take comfort in the suggestion. "You are right. I should at least talk to Dad first." "Thank you, Nathan." She squeezed my hand gratefully. I needed to hear that. "You always know how to make me feel better." We sat there for a few more minutes as she composed herself. I offered to get her a glass of water, but she insisted she was fine and ready to return to the reception. As we stood to leave, I noticed a flash of burgundy fabric disappearing around a hedge, the same color as the bridesmaid dresses. Someone had been listening to our conversation. Back inside, the celebration was in full swing. Megan rejoined Ryan on the dance floor, her smile back in place, though it seemed more forced than before. I found Stephanie chatting with my parents and joined them, pushing the garden conversation to the back of my mind. About an hour later, as I was returning from the bar with drinks for Stephanie and myself, I noticed a commotion near the center of the ballroom. Ryan was standing there, his face flushed with what appeared to be anger, his voice carrying across the room as the music abruptly stopped. "Where is he? Where is Nathan?" he demanded loudly. The crowd parted as all eyes turned to me. Confused, I stepped forward. "I am right here. What is going on?" Ryan pointed an accusatory finger at me. "You have got some nerve trying to sabotage my marriage on our wedding day." A murmur ran through the assembled guests. I looked around in bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" "Do not play innocent," Ryan spat. "You tried to make a move on my wife. In the garden less than an hour ago, you told her to leave me." The accusation was so absurd, so completely unexpected, that for a moment I could only stare at him in shock. "That is ridiculous. We were just talking." "You tried to kiss her," Ryan shouted, cutting me off. "You told her she was making a mistake marrying me." "That is absolutely not true," I said firmly, looking around at the shocked faces of my family members. "Megan was upset we talked. That is all." Amber stepped forward then, her expression triumphant. "I saw everything. I was walking in the garden and saw you with your arms around Megan, telling her she should not go through with the marriage." The room had gone completely silent. I looked to Megan, expecting her to speak up to correct this outrageous lie. But she stood frozen beside Ryan, her face, pale eyes downcast, saying nothing to defend me. "Megan, tell them this is not true," I pleaded. She finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine for a brief second before looking away. I was emotional. Nathan was. She stammered, not finishing her sentence as Ryan put his arm around her possessively. The atmosphere in the room had turned toxic. Family members who had been laughing with me just minutes before now looked at me with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. My father's face hardened into a mask of disappointment. "Nathan, how could you?" My Aunt Patricia asked, her voice thick with disapproval. "Is it true?" My father's question cut deeper than any other. The doubt in his eyes was unmistakable. "No, of course not. This is insane." I looked desperately around the room, seeking any ally, any face that showed belief in me. I found none. Even Stephanie had taken a step back from me, uncertainty written across her features. In the span of 5 minutes, I had gone from beloved family member to pariah, all based on a completely fabricated story that made absolutely no sense to anyone who truly knew me. But in that moment, it seemed that no one did. "I think you should leave." Uncle William's voice was cold as ice as he approached me, his expression a mixture of anger and profound disappointment. This was the man who had taught me to fish, who had cheered the loudest at my high school graduation. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger. "This is a misunderstanding," I tried again, desperation creeping into my voice. "I would never." "You have done enough damage," he interrupted. "Please respect Megan's day and leave now." The walk through the reception hall was the longest of my life. Eyes followed me, some curious, some condemning, all uncomfortable. Whispers trailed in my wake. The family that had surrounded me with love my entire life now parted like I was contaminated. I looked for Stephanie, hoping she at least would stand by me, but she avoided my gaze and mumbled something about needing space and getting a ride with someone else. 24 hours earlier, she had been excitedly discussing meeting my extended family, seeing this as a significant step in our relationship. Now she could not even look at me. I drove back to Boston alone that night, the 3-hour journey stretching into what felt like an eternity. My phone buzzed constantly with group chat notifications, but when I checked at a rest stop, I discovered I had been removed from the family thread, and these were messages from a new group that excluded me. Brief glimpses showed relatives expressing their shock and dismay at my behavior. I called Megan repeatedly, desperate to understand why she had not defended me, why she had allowed this lie to stand. Each call went straight to voicemail. I left messages ranging from confused to pleading to angry, none of which were returned. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was my grandfather, Thomas. My heart leapt with hope. Surely he who knew me better than anyone would not believe these ridiculous accusations. "Grandpa, thank God. You would not believe what happened." "How could you, Nathan?" His voice sounded older than I had ever heard it, heavy with disappointment. "After everything this family has done for you. After how close you and Megan have always been." "Grandpa, it is not true. You know me. You know I would never." "I thought I knew you," he interrupted, his voice breaking. "I have to go. Your grandmother is very upset." The call ended, and with it my last hope that someone in my family would stand by me. The next day was Sunday family dinner day. My phone remained silent. No one called with the usual reminder or to ask what dish I would be bringing. By mid-afternoon, I could not bear the uncertainty and called my mother. "Is dinner still happening tonight?" I asked, when she answered, her voice noticeably cooler than usual. "Yes," she replied stiffly. "Should I bring the usual salad or—" "I think it would be better if you did not come this week, Nathan. Everyone is still very upset." "Mom, you cannot seriously believe I would do what they are accusing me of. You raised me better than that." Her silence spoke volumes. "Can I at least come talk to you and Dad? Explain my side. Your father does not want to see you right now. Give it some time, Nathan. We all need to process this." That Sunday was the first family dinner I had missed since moving back to Boston after college. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the clock as 6 o'clock came and went, imagining everyone gathered around my grandparents' table without me. As days turned into weeks, A theory began forming in my mind. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Ryan and Amber had orchestrated this whole thing because they had overheard my conversation with Megan about her inheritance. They feared I would influence her decision about investing in Ryan's business, so they created this outrageous lie to isolate me from her and the rest of the family. I tried reaching out to different family members, cousins. I had been close with aunts who had always doted on me, my parents again. Each attempt was met with either icy responses or no response at all. The narrative had been accepted as truth, and no one was interested in hearing my side of the story. Stephanie officially ended our relationship via text message 2 weeks after the wedding. "I have heard too many concerning things," she wrote. "There are just too many red flags. I wish you the best, but I cannot do this." She did not specify what concerning things she had heard, but I could only imagine the stories that were circulating. The thought of my family people who had known me my entire life spreading lies about me was almost more painful than the original accusation. At work, colleagues noticed my withdrawal and depression. My performance began to suffer, but I could not bring myself to explain what had happened. How could I tell people that my entire family had disowned me over a lie, told at a wedding? It sounded unbelievable even to me, and I was living it. Thanksgiving loomed on the horizon like a dark cloud. Since childhood, the holiday had been a major event in our family, with relatives traveling from as far as California to gather at my grandparents' house. This year, my invitation was conspicuously absent. I spent the day alone in my apartment with a microwave turkey dinner and a bottle of whiskey, scrolling through social media to torture myself with pictures of the family gathering. There they all were, smiling, laughing, celebrating together as if nothing was missing, as if I had never existed. I sent Christmas gifts to everyone anyway, thoughtfully chosen items wrapped with care and delivered to my grandparents' house, where I knew the family would gather on Christmas Eve. A week later, I found a box on my doorstep containing all of the unopened presents. New Year came and went in similar isolation. The family tradition had always been to gather at my parents' house to watch the ball drop, everyone shouting the countdown together before exchanging hugs and wishes for the coming year. This year, my phone remained silent at midnight. As winter deepened, so did my depression. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Matthews, who helped me navigate the profound grief of losing my entire family at once. "What you are experiencing is a form of ambiguous loss," she explained. "Your family is physically absent, but psychologically present. There is no closure because there has been no opportunity for resolution." The first panic attack hit me in the produce section of the grocery store, when I unexpectedly ran into my Aunt Patricia. She saw me, froze momentarily, then turned her cart and hurried in the opposite direction as if I were dangerous. I ended up sitting in my car in the parking lot for over an hour, struggling to breathe, my heart racing so fast I thought I might be having a heart attack. Dr. Matthews recommended increasing our sessions to twice weekly. "Family rejection is one of the most profound traumas a person can experience," she told me. "Your reaction is completely normal, given the circumstances." Normal or not, I felt like I was drowning. The family that had been my anchor, my foundation, my safety net had vanished overnight. And all because of a lie that made absolutely no sense to anyone who truly knew me. As weeks turned to months and months to years, I was forced to rebuild my life from the ground up. The pain of family rejection never fully disappeared, but gradually it transformed from an acute stabbing agony into a dull, persistent ache, always present but manageable enough to function around. I moved from Cambridge to Somerville, partly for a change of scenery, but mostly to reduce the chances of accidental encounters with family members. My apartment was smaller, but came with a basement space that I gradually converted into a modest woodworking shop, a connection to my grandfather that I refused to relinquish despite his rejection. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into coding with a fervor that bordered on obsession, often staying at the office until the cleaning staff arrived. My dedication did not go unnoticed, and promotions followed. By the end of the second year, I had been elevated to senior developer with a substantial salary increase and a team reporting to me. The irony was not lost on me. Professionally, I was thriving, while personally I was in ruins. Money accumulated in my bank account, with no family birthdays to buy gifts for, no holiday celebrations to contribute to, no nieces or nephews' college funds to support. My social circle underwent a complete transformation. I could not bear to maintain friendships with people who knew my family, as they inevitably had heard the rumors and looked at me with that same mixture of pity and suspicion. Instead, I forged connections with colleagues, neighbors, and members of a woodworking club. I joined people who knew nothing of my past and accepted me at face value. The holidays remained the hardest times. That first Christmas alone had been devastating, but I foolishly expected the second to be easier. It was not, nor was the third. Each December brought the same hollow ache, the phantom pain of missing traditions, my grandmother's sugar cookies, the chaotic gift exchange with far too many people crammed into the living room, my grandfather's reading of Night Before Christmas to all the younger cousins. My only remaining connection to family news was my third cousin Alice, who lived in Seattle and had not attended the wedding. She was distant enough from the drama to maintain occasional contact with me, though she was careful never to be seen doing so by other family members. Through Alice's sporadic updates, I learned that Megan and Ryan had purchased an extravagant house in Wellesley, well beyond what a typical young couple could afford. Ryan's business appeared to be thriving, at least on the surface, undoubtedly fueled by Megan's inheritance, the very money her grandmother had intended for her art gallery dreams. Everyone still believes Ryan's version of what happened, Alice told me during a rare phone call in the third year. The story has gotten more dramatic with each retelling. Now they say you had been secretly in love with Megan for years and tried to convince her to run away with you at the wedding. I laughed bitterly at the absurdity. Megan has always been like a sister to me. Anyone who believes that nonsense never knew either of us at all. I know, Alice said quietly. For what it is worth, I never believed it. But I am not exactly an influential voice in the family. Her support minimal, as it was meant more than she could possibly know. In the third year of my exile, my grandfather Thomas passed away. I learned about it not from family, but from his obituary in the Boston Globe. The funeral was scheduled for Thursday at the church where I had been baptized, confirmed, and had served as an altar boy throughout my youth. I called my mother the first time I had attempted contact in over a year. I just heard about Grandpa, I said when she answered my voice thick with unshed tears. I would like to come to the funeral. Her response was immediate and firm. I do not think that would be appropriate, Nathan. The family is grieving. We do not need additional stress right now. He was my grandfather too, I protested, anger rising to mask my pain. I have the right to say goodbye. You gave up that right when you betrayed this family, she replied coldly. Please respect our wishes during this difficult time. I went to the cemetery a week after the funeral, standing at the fresh grave long after the flowers had begun to wilt. I did not do it, Grandpa. I whispered, tears, finally falling freely. I wish you had believed in me. The pain of not being able to say a proper goodbye, of being excluded from the collective grieving process with my family, was almost unbearable. Dr. Matthews helped me organize a private memorial service of sorts, just me and a few close friends gathering at my apartment to share stories about Thomas and his impact on my life. It was a poor substitute for the traditional Irish wake my family would have held, but it provided a small measure of closure. In the fourth year, I began tentatively dating again. Trust did not come easily to me anymore, and the first few attempts fizzled quickly. How could I explain to someone new why I had no family pictures on my walls? Why I changed the subject whenever family traditions came up? Why I became evasive about holiday plans? Woodworking became my therapy, a way to feel connected to my grandfather despite everything. I started with small projects, cutting boards and picture frames, gradually working up to larger pieces like coffee tables and bookshelves. Each finished piece felt like a conversation with him, a way of saying, I remembered what you taught me. It still matters. By the fifth year, I had developed a harder, more resilient exterior. The Nathan, who had existed before the wedding, trusting, open, eager to please, was gone, replaced by someone more guarded, more skeptical, more self-sufficient. I had learned the hard way that blood ties guaranteed nothing, that people who claimed to love you unconditionally actually had many conditions indeed. I created new traditions to replace the lost family ones. Thanksgiving became a Friendsgiving hosted at my apartment for others who, for various reasons, could not go home for the holiday. Christmas Eve, formerly spent at my grandparents' house, became volunteer night at a local homeless shelter. New Year's Eve, once a family countdown at my parents' home, transformed into a quiet night of reflection and goal-setting for the coming year. On the 5-year anniversary of the wedding, I took the day off work and drove to a beach on Cape Cod where our family had vacationed every summer. The off-season shore was deserted, wind whipping across the empty expanse of sand. Standing at the edge of the Atlantic, I made a decision. It was time to fully move on. To stop hoping for a reconciliation that would never come. To accept that my family would never know the truth, and I would never understand how they could discard me so easily. That night I drafted emails to all the key family members, my parents, my grandma, my aunts and uncles, Megan. The messages were brief, simply stating that I was formally closing this chapter of my life, that I forgave them, though they had not asked for forgiveness, and that I wished them well. I never sent them, but writing the words felt like setting down a heavy burden I had carried for far too long. The next morning I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years, ready to embrace a future without the weight of false hope. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. The email from Megan arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, appearing in my inbox between a work newsletter and a furniture store sale notification. The subject line was simply my name, Nathan. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before finding the courage to open it. The message inside was brief. Nathan, I need to talk to you. In person. It is important. Please. Megan. No explanation, no pleasantries, just a request that landed like a bomb in the carefully reconstructed life I had built. My finger hovered over the delete button. What could she possibly have to say that would matter now 5 years later? Yet curiosity, or perhaps some masochistic impulse, made me reply with the name and address of a coffee shop halfway between Somerville and Wellesley, and a time, Saturday 10 a.m. The days until Saturday crawled by. I cycled through emotions ranging from anger to anxiety to a traitorous spark of hope. By the time I arrived at the coffee shop, intentionally 10 minutes late to ensure I would not be kept waiting, I had settled on a cold detachment that felt like the only safe option. Megan was already there, seated at a corner table with her back to the wall. 5 years had changed her. The vibrant, confident woman I remembered had been replaced by someone thinner, paler, with dark circles under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup. Her smile was tentative as I approached, not reaching her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her, not bothering to remove my jacket, a silent signal that I did not intend to stay long. "What do you want, Megan?" My voice came out harsher than I had intended. She flinched slightly. I deserved that. I deserve worse, actually. Her fingers twisted the wedding ring she still wore. I do not even know where to begin. The beginning would be traditional, I suggested dryly. She nodded, drawing a deep breath. The beginning. Right. I guess that would be. I am sorry, Nathan. So, incredibly, unforgivably, sorry. The words hung in the air between us. Words I had once desperately wanted to hear, but that now felt hollow, coming 5 years too late. Sorry for what specifically? For believing I would make a pass at you. For watching silently while your husband destroyed my relationship with our entire family. For never once in 5 years speaking up about the truth. For all of it, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. But mostly for being too afraid to tell the truth. You were right that day in the garden. About everything. And for sin. I waited, my expression neutral despite the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Ryan was never who I thought he was. She continued, her voice breaking. The charming, confident man I fell in love with. That was just a mask. Underneath, he was controlling, manipulative. He isolated me from anyone he saw as a threat, starting with you. Because of the inheritance, I stated flatly. She looked surprised. You knew. I pieced it together afterward. You told me about his pressure to invest your inheritance in his business. He must have realized I was encouraging you to think twice. He needed me out of the picture. Megan nodded, wiping away a tear. He and Amber planned the whole thing. They knew exactly what to say to make everyone believe the worst about you. And I was too terrified to contradict him. You have no idea what he was like behind closed doors, Nathan. The rage if I ever challenged him publicly. So you sacrificed me. Instead, I concluded, the old pain flaring anew. I did, she admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. It is the greatest regret of my life, and I have quite a few to choose from. Something in her tone made me really look at her. The nervous glances toward the door, the slight tremble in her hands, the way she seemed both smaller and older than the Megan I had known. What happened after I asked, my voice softening slightly, despite my resolve to remain detached, with the inheritance with Ryan. Everything you warned me about, she said with a bitter laugh. I signed it all over to him the week after the wedding. $300,000 gone within 2 years on business expenses that somehow included a boat and memberships to exclusive clubs. His business was never what he claimed, just a shell to funnel money through. And when that was gone, she trailed off, swallowing hard. He became even more controlling. Monitored my phone, my email, my spending. Isolated me from friends. Even family eventually. Classic abuser playbook, right? I was just too blind to see it coming. She pushed up her sleeve slightly, revealing the fading shadow of a bruise on her wrist. My anger at Megan momentarily redirected toward Ryan. Did he hurt you? Not at first. The physical stuff only started in the last year. Before that, it was all emotional and financial abuse. She pulled her sleeve back down. I finally filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. I am staying with my parents right now. He does not know where. I am sorry you went through that, I said, and meant it despite everything. I do not deserve your sympathy, she replied. Not after what I let happen to you. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I told everyone the truth, Nathan. My parents, your parents, the whole family. About the lie, about Ryan's abuse, all of it. I showed them text messages between Ryan and Amber planning the whole thing. My heart began hammering in my chest. You, what? They know the truth now. All of them. That you were innocent. That you were only trying to protect me. She slid the envelope across the table. They wanted me to give you this. Inside were a dozen handwritten notes from various family members. My parents, my grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing profound regret, shame, apologies. All begging for a chance to make amends. My phone, which had been silent of family contact for 5 years, suddenly chimed with multiple notifications. Then again, and again. The family group chat I had been removed from years ago, the individual messages all suddenly flooding back as if a dam had broken. I turned off the phone without reading any of them, overwhelmed by the onslaught. They want to see you, Megan said softly. They are devastated by what they did. What we all did. I carefully returned the notes to the envelope, my emotions too complex to untangle in that moment. I need time to process this. Of course, she nodded quickly. Take all the time you need. They really do want to make things right, Nathan. Especially your parents. Your mom has been crying for days since I told them. 5 years, I said quietly. 5 years of holidays alone. 5 years of birthdays unacknowledged. 5 years of being treated like I was dead to them. And Grandpa, my voice caught. He died believing I was someone I never was. Megan reached across the table as if to touch my hand, then thought better of it and withdrew. I know. And nothing can ever make up for that. I had to tell you I am sorry, and that they know the truth now. What you do with that is entirely up to you. I stood needing to escape before my carefully constructed walls crumbled completely. I need to go. Nathan, she called as I turned to leave. For what it is worth, thank you. For trying to protect me that day. You were the only one who saw through him, and I should have listened. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak, and walked out of the coffee shop into the bright October morning. 5 years of exile suddenly ended by the truth I had given up, hoping would ever come to light. For 3 days I ignored the barrage of messages, voicemails, and even emails from family members. Each notification felt like salt in wounds that had barely begun to heal. the words all blurred together in their desperate pleas. So sorry. Terrible mistake, please forgive us. Want to make amends. After 5 years of silence, the sudden chorus of voices was overwhelming. On the fourth day, I finally responded to my parents with a terse message: I will come to the house on Sunday at 2. Just immediate family. The drive to my childhood home in Brookline was surreal. How many times had I made this journey over the years, always with a sense of warmth and anticipation. Now my knuckles were white. On the steering wheel, my jaw clenched so tight, it ached. The house looked exactly the same, the blue colonial with white trim, the maple tree in the front yard. Now displaying its autumn colors, the stone path leading to the front door where I had once posed for first day of school. Pictures, only I was different. My mother opened the door before I could knock. 5 years had aged her more than they should have. New lines around her eyes, more gray in her hair, a slight stoop to shoulders that had once been proudly straight. She reached toward me instinctively, then hesitated, reading the rigidity in my posture. Nathan, she whispered, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Oh, Nathan. I stepped past her without accepting the embrace, entering the home that had once been a second residence to me. The familiar scents, Mom's cinnamon potpourri, Dad's pipe tobacco, hit me with unexpected force. My throat tightened, but I swallowed hard, determined to maintain my composure. In the living room waited my father, Aunt Patricia, and Uncle William, Megan's parents, and my grandmother, Catherine. All looked up as I entered, their expressions a mixture of shame, hope, and trepidation. The space where my grandfather should have been, his worn leather armchair now occupied by my father, was a presence in itself, a glaring reminder of what could never be restored. No one seemed to know how to begin. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my father finally stood, extending his hand formally, as if we were business associates rather than blood. Son, he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. I looked at the offered hand for a long moment before briefly taking it, noting how much older my father looked, more gray, more wrinkles. A certain diminishment to the man who had once seemed indestructible to me. Thank you for coming, my mother said, perching on the edge of the sofa, as if afraid to take up too much space in my presence. We know words cannot possibly be enough. Then perhaps you should save them, I suggested, remaining standing while everyone else sat. The power dynamic was not lost on me. For once they were looking up at me, waiting anxiously for my response rather than the other way around. Uncle William cleared his throat. Nathan, we owe you an explanation. At the very least. What happened? I know what happened, I interrupted coldly. Megan told me everything. Ryan and his sister Amber lied about me to isolate Megan from anyone who might prevent her from investing her inheritance in Ryan's sham business. And all of you, every single person who had known me my entire life, chose to believe the worst about me without a second thought. No one contradicted me. Their silence was confirmation enough. What I do not understand, I continued, my voice gaining strength, is how easily you discarded me. 30 years of knowing my character, my values, my relationship with Megan, all erased by one accusation from a man who had been in our lives for less than a year. We were manipulated, Aunt Patricia offered weakly. Ryan was very convincing, and Amber swore she saw— Stop. My voice was sharp enough to make her flinch. I am not interested in excuses. Ryan may have lied, but you chose to believe him. All of you did. I turned to my parents specifically. You raised me. You taught me about integrity, about family loyalty. How could you think I would do something so despicable? My father's face crumpled slightly. We have asked ourselves that question every day since Megan told us the truth. There is no satisfactory answer, Nathan. We failed you completely. Yes, I agreed simply. You did. My grandmother spoke up then, her voice quavering with age and emotion. When Thomas was dying, he asked for you. Did you know that his last coherent words were your name? The statement hit me like a physical blow. I turned away, moving to the window to hide the emotion that threatened to break through my carefully constructed facade. He never fully believed you had done what they said, she continued. He defended you at first, said there must be some mistake. But when Megan herself would not contradict Ryan's story, she trailed off the implication clear. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, struggling to maintain control. "I went to his grave," I said quietly. "A week after the funeral, you forbade me from attending. I stood there alone and tried to say goodbye to the man who taught me everything I know about being a decent human being. A man who died thinking I had betrayed everything he taught me." The silence that followed was heavy with collective shame. When I turned back to face them, my resolve had solidified again. "For 5 years I have lived with the pain of your rejection. 5 years of holidays alone. 5 years of being treated like I had died. 5 years of therapy trying to understand how the people who claimed to love me most could discard me so easily. We want to make it right," my mother pleaded, tears streaming down her face now. "Whatever it takes, we know we do not deserve your forgiveness, but please, Nathan, give us a chance to try to earn it back." Uncle William leaned forward, his businessman instincts apparently kicking in. "We have been discussing compensation for the emotional damages. Your aunt and I would like to offer money." I cut him off incredulously. "You think this can be resolved with a check? That 5 years of being treated as dead to this family can be erased with financial compensation?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "I just meant to show how seriously we take this. How much we regret. You cannot buy redemption, Uncle William. Some things once broken cannot be fixed, not with money, not with apologies, not with anything." My mother was openly sobbing now. "Please, Nathan. We are still your family. We made a terrible, unforgivable mistake, but we love you. We have always loved you." Family, I repeated the word, tasting bitter on my tongue. Family does not abandon one of their own based on an unsubstantiated accusation. Family gives the benefit of the doubt. Family investigates before passing judgment. Family stands by you when everyone else turns away. I looked around the room at each of them in turn. None of you were family to me when I needed you most. "What can we do?" my father asked desperately. "Tell us what we can do to begin to make this right." I considered the question seriously, taking in their pleading faces, their obvious remorse. Part of me, a small wounded part that had never stopped yearning for reconciliation, wanted to collapse into their arms to accept their apologies, to try to rebuild what had been lost. But the larger part of me, the part that had been forged in the fire of their rejection, knew that some divides are too wide to bridge, some betrayals cut too deep for full healing. "I forgive you," I said finally, my voice steady and clear. "I forgive all of you. Not for your benefit, but for mine. Carrying anger and resentment has been exhausting, and I am ready to set that burden down." Hope flickered across their faces, quickly extinguished by my next words. "But forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I have built a life without you. A good life, with people who have proven their loyalty. I am not willing to dismantle the walls I have built for protection, not for people who showed me how conditional their love truly was. You are cutting us off completely." My grandmother's voice quavered. "I am acknowledging the reality of what already happened," I corrected gently. "You cut me off 5 years ago. I am simply declining to pretend we can go back to how things were before." "But we are blood," my father protested. "We are your family." "Blood means nothing without trust," I replied. "And trust once shattered cannot be repaired with a few tears and apologies." The finality in my voice seemed to register. My mother's sobs intensified while my father's face took on the gray pallor of profound grief. Uncle William and Aunt Patricia sat in stunned silence, perhaps never having imagined that their forgiveness would not be automatically granted once the truth was known. "I wish you all well," I said, moving toward the door. "I truly do. But my life continues without you in it. That is the consequence of the choice you all made 5 years ago." My mother rose, making one last desperate plea. "Nathan, please. We are your parents. We made a terrible mistake, but we have always loved you. Please, do not punish us forever." I paused at the door, looking back at the broken circle of my former family. This is not punishment. This is protection of myself, of the peace I have fought hard to find. I hope you can understand that someday." With those words, I walked out of my childhood home, closing the door quietly but firmly on the past. Their tears and pleas followed me down the walk, but my steps did not falter. For the first time in 5 years, I felt truly free, not from the pain of what had happened, but from the hope of what could never be again. Walking away from my family's home that day, I experienced an unexpected sensation: lightness. It was as if I had been carrying an invisible weight for 5 years, one so constant I had forgotten it was there until it was suddenly lifted. The burden had not been just the pain of rejection, but the unacknowledged hope that someday, somehow, the truth would emerge, and everything would be made right. Now the truth had emerged, but nothing could be made truly right again. Accepting that finality paradoxically brought relief. The days following the confrontation were surprisingly peaceful. I had expected doubt to creep in, for second thoughts to plague me, for the old longing for family connection to resurface. Instead, I felt increasingly certain that I had made the right decision for my well-being. Dr. Matthews validated this feeling in our next session. "What you are experiencing is the peace that comes with making a decision that honors your boundaries and self-worth," she explained. "For years you have been in limbo, cut off from your family, but still emotionally tethered to the hope of reconciliation. Now you have taken control of the narrative." "I never thought I would be the one to walk away when they finally wanted me back," I admitted. "That is because you are not the same person you were 5 years ago," she pointed out. "The Nathan they rejected would have gratefully accepted any chance to be back in the fold. The Nathan you have become understands his own value and requires more than apologies driven by guilt." My understanding of what constitutes true family had been completely transformed through this ordeal. Blood relationships, I had learned, were merely biological accidents. Real family was something different entirely. It was built on consistent actions, on showing up, on giving the benefit of the doubt, on standing beside someone when it would be easier to walk away. The friends who had become my chosen family over the past 5 years had demonstrated these qualities far more reliably than those who shared my DNA. These were the people who had helped me move apartments without complaint, who had insisted I join their holiday celebrations when they knew I would be alone, who had sat with me in silence when words were inadequate after I learned of my grandfather's death. A week after the confrontation, Megan reached out again, asking to meet. I agreed, this time choosing a park near my apartment, neutral ground, with the added benefit of being public. She looked marginally better than during our first meeting, less haunted, though still far from the vibrant cousin I had once known. We walked along a tree-lined path, fallen leaves crunching beneath our feet, the October air crisp and clear. "They told me what happened," she said, after we had walked in silence for several minutes. "That you forgave them, but do not want them back in your life." I nodded, watching a squirrel dart up a nearby oak tree. "Does that surprise you?" "No," she admitted. "I would probably feel the same way. She hesitated. "They are devastated, Nathan. Especially your parents." "I know," I said simply, "and I am genuinely sorry for their pain. But I cannot set myself on fire to keep them warm." "I understand." She kicked at a pile of leaves absently. "What about me? Is there any chance we could ever repair our relationship?" I considered the question seriously. "I do not know, Megan. You were as much a victim of Ryan as I was, in different ways. I do not blame you for being afraid to stand up to him, but you had 5 years to tell the truth once you were away from him at family gatherings. 5 years when a single word from you could have changed everything." She nodded, accepting the truth of this assessment. "I have no excuse. I was a coward." "Fear is a powerful motivator," I acknowledged. "I can offer you support through your divorce. I can be a friendly presence if you need someone to talk to. But the trust and closeness we once had, I do not see how that can be restored." She wiped away a tear but nodded again. "I understand. Thank you for being willing to offer even that much. It is more than I deserve." As we parted ways, I felt another piece of the past settling into its proper perspective, not forgotten, but properly categorized as something that had shaped me, rather than something that continued to control me. At work the following week, I was called into my director's office and offered a substantial promotion to engineering manager. "Your leadership skills have really come into their own over the past couple of years," my director commented. "You have a calm steadiness about you now. A resilience that the team responds to." Resilience. It was an apt description for what I had developed through necessity, the ability to bend without breaking to weather storms and remain standing to find strength in solitude rather than despair. That weekend, I completed a project I had been working on for months. A handcrafted dining table made from cherry wood, using the techniques my grandfather had taught me, and tools I had inherited from a fellow woodworking club member who had moved overseas. Running my hand over the smooth surface, feeling the grain beneath my fingertips, I could almost hear Thomas's voice. "Take your time. Do it right. Build things that last." The irony was not lost on me that I had created a dining table, a symbol of family gatherings, while having permanently closed the door on my own family relationships. But perhaps that was fitting too. The table would host gatherings of my chosen family, the people who had earned their places in my life through loyalty and consistent support. As the holiday season approached, I faced it with a new sense of freedom. For the first time in 5 years, there would be no shadow of loss hanging over my celebrations. No wondering what was happening at the family dinner. I was not invited to no imagining conversations where I was being discussed in my hazen absence. The holidays would be exactly what I chose to make them with the people I chose to include. On Thanksgiving, I hosted my annual Friendsgiving. But this year it felt different, not a substitute for what I could not have, but a genuine tradition in its own right. As I looked around at the faces of friends who had proven their worth through actions rather than mere biological connection, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The weekend before Christmas, I made a solitary pilgrimage to the cemetery where my grandfather was buried. The winter air was sharp with cold, the ground hardened with frost. But I sat on a bench near his grave for nearly an hour. "They know the truth now, Grandpa," I said aloud, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "You were right about family being the most important thing. You were just wrong about who qualifies as family. It is not about blood, it is about who stays when it would be easier to leave." Before leaving, I placed a small wooden box on his headstone, a miniature version of his toolbox that I had crafted as a tribute. Inside was a note telling him I had forgiven everyone, including him, and that I hoped he had found peace. That act of closure allowed me to enter the new year with a lightness I had not felt in half a decade. The pain had not disappeared. Some wounds leave permanent scars, but it no longer defined me. I had passed through fire and emerged stronger, clearer about my values, more discerning about who deserved access to my life and heart. The most important lesson I had learned through this ordeal was the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness was an internal process, a release of the anger and resentment that had poisoned only my own peace of mind. It was something I did for myself, not for those who had wronged me. Reconciliation, on the other hand, would have required rebuilding trust, re-establishing connections, risking my hard-won emotional stability on the hope that people who had failed me once would not do so again. And that was a risk I was not willing to take. Some might view my decision as harsh or unforgiving. But I had come to understand that maintaining healthy boundaries is not an act of vengeance, but an act of self-respect. The family that had rejected me so completely had taught me inadvertently my most valuable lesson: I am enough on my own. My worth is not determined by their acceptance. My life can be rich and meaningful without their presence in it. The truth had indeed come out after 5 long years, but contrary to what fairy tales might suggest, the revelation of truth does not automatically heal all wounds or restore what was broken. Sometimes it simply allows you to move forward with clarity, rather than confusion, with certainty rather than doubt. And sometimes moving forward means walking away not in anger but in peace. Not as punishment but as protection. Not with bitterness but with the wisdom that comes only through suffering. What would you do if your entire family turned against you based on a lie, only to come crawling back years later when the truth finally emerged? Would you forgive and forget? Or would you protect your peace, like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength after betrayal. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening, and may you never have to discover how strong you truly are through such painful circumstances.